a magia do futebol. Somos diferentes, mas torcer nos faz parecidos. Não importa se você assiste com a camisa da sorte, no bar com amigos ou em casa na poltrona.
Preparou, vai bater, pegou!
Se você é o que grita mais alto, o que só comemora depois do replay, cada um torce do seu jeito. Coca-Cola. Torcer é pra todos.
Olha o contra-ataque aí, vem que vem o time avançando rápido pela linha de campo. Bola dominada no pé do camisa 10. Ele vai pra cima, passou pelo primeiro, passou pelo segundo. E bateu a grande área, vai chutar. Bateu, é gol! Que golaço, minha gente!
A experiência de futebol mais autêntica já criada pros games. Junte-se no 5x5 Rush, a nova maneira de jogar com os amigos e leve seu clube pra vitória. EA Sports FC 25. Dê tudo pelo clube. Já disponível.
Essa música numa aventura off-road, hein? Já imaginou? Então aproveita para se imaginar a bordo do novo Jeep Renegade 2025. Agora com as novas versões Altitude, Willys, Saara e Night Eagle. Todas com motor turbo de 185 cavalos, o mais potente da categoria, capacidade off-road e 5 anos de garantia. Com certeza um deles é a sua cara. Ou melhor, o seu espírito aventureiro. Aproveite, faça um test drive no novo Jeep Renegade. Paz no Trânsito começa por você.
England are a very physical team, so we needed to compete there. It's also an area that we want to push in towards our team DNA. We want to compete physically. We were able to obviously compete for about 70 minutes in at that high level, and obviously disappointed with the last 10 minutes because it's one of those cliches sometimes that the scoreline doesn't reflect the game. In this instance, we were at 21-33. We were in the game and we were competing. Unfortunately, we didn't then close out the game, but at the same time, obviously, England are exactly what they are, world number one, and they showed that class to create 4 opportunities at the end and take them. But what was more pleasing for us is that we scored 3 tries in 3 different ways. Lev, brilliant individual try that only she can score, which was outstanding. You know, her second try was a team try. That was on the back of about 13 phases of pretty physical carries into some skill, into some more physicality around that pick and drive. And then the last try for Kate, which was great to have her back in the mix, was a really well-worked set-piece move. So that's exciting. And I think we're the only team other than France this year to score 3 tries against England. So we'll take that and be pretty happy with it.
Welcome to U.S. Rugby Happy Hour Live. Interviews with the biggest names in American rugby.
The New England Free Jacks, Major League Rugby champions. One-on-one to score.
Here are your hosts, Bill Baker and that other guy.
I'm not going to waste any time because our next guest has been waiting in the happy hour green room, eating up all the snacks and the drinks we left for him. Hopefully no alcoholic beverages because we have a lot to talk about. Let's bring him back. Let's bring him on again. Coming back on the show, I believe his 3rd time, is USA Women's head coach, Sione Fukofuka. Sione, how are you? Unfortunately, I can't hear you. Oh, there you are. Yes. I always get scared there when we bring someone in the middle of the show. It's like, I hope we can hear them. How are you?
Good. Very good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. So about 9 months, give or take, since you've taken over the program. You seem to have all your hair still. That's a good thing.
Still got my hair. A lot more white has come through. But, it's been great. Really enjoyed the challenge. And obviously here in Vancouver, we're up against the best teams in the world, which is exciting. A lot of growth in the group and clearly the World Cup on the horizon. So we're taking a lot of learnings out of each game that we've got here.
Absolutely. All right, Sione, have you ever been to British Columbia, up that part of Canada?
No, not that part. I was in Ottawa last year, but first time there.
Beautiful, beautiful location.
Yeah.
I get there sometime. Much more beautiful when you win matches, but we'll get to that in a second here. So let's jump into it, Sione. WXV1, you're up there in British Columbia, like I just mentioned. England, France, New Zealand, Ireland, and Canada's in there as well, but you're not facing them right off. First of all, let's just back up a second with the WXV1. Let's talk about how big or how important it was for the Eagles to qualify for the WXV1.
I think from a playing perspective and the players within the squad, it was massive. It gave them a lot of belief that they could. Clearly, the result against Australia was well earned, and we had to go deep to win it. But what was exciting is the response of the playing group, and obviously that trust in us as a coaching staff, but also the belief that we can take steps forward. It qualified us for a World Cup, so it gave a lot of clarity in terms of what the next 12 months look like and how we can navigate through that. But more importantly, as I said just before, it gives us an opportunity to test ourselves against the best teams in the world. So obviously England, world number one last week. We've got France, world number 3, I was at 4 this week. So it's we're really enjoying being involved in the top tier, and we want to keep developing and improving so we stay there.
So unfortunate 61-21 loss to England. I don't think the score reflects how well the team played, except for near the end of the match. But generally speaking, talk about the team's performance and talk about how you prepared for England. What was the game plan? It looked like a very physical game plan and speed as well. Yeah,
so we were lucky to have probably our biggest lead in to a test match. We had 2 weeks, a week in Bellingham, which we were at Chuckanut Rugby Club, and that was excellent. We had a lot of time there to put a lot of learning in place and some and obviously a lot of physical work that went into preparing a test match team. From a tactical point of view, there were some key areas that we wanted to compete in, and obviously physicality in international rugby, full stop, men or women, is at the forefront, and we knew England are a very physical team, so we needed to compete there. It's also an area that we want to push in towards our team DNA. We want to compete physically and bring back, I suppose, that I suppose mantra of the past, where the US teams were well known for being physical, skillful teams, and we're building towards that. We were able to obviously compete for about 70 minutes at that high level, and obviously disappointed with the last 10 minutes because it's one of those cliches sometimes that the scoreline doesn't reflect the game. In this instance, it didn't. We were at 21-33. We were in the game and we were competing. Unfortunately, we didn't then close out the game. But at the same time, obviously, England are exactly what they are, world number one, and they showed that class to create 4 opportunities at the end and take them. So, the speed itself, we're working to get better at that. It's an area that we would like to keep improving. Obviously, with the injection of a few sevens players, we've been able to add the strike to the outside channel. But what was probably more pleasing for us is that we scored 3 tries in 3 different ways. Lev, brilliant individual try that only she can score, which was outstanding. Then, her second try was a team try. That was on the back of about 13 phases of pretty physical carries into some skill, into some more physicality around that pick and drive. And then the last try for Kate, which was great to have her back in the mix. It was a really well-worked set-piece move. So that's exciting. And I think we're the only team this year, the only team other than France this year to score 3 tries against England. So we'll take that and be pretty happy with it. At the same time, that last 10 minutes hurts a little bit and took the shine away.
And Sione, what was it about those last 10 minutes or so? Like you said, it was a close game to that point. The wheels fell off the bus, obviously. What happened was fatigue. Was it just mental fatigue as well, not just the body?
Yeah, I think and I think this might have come up in one of our previous conversations. So we're working to build our physicality. The reality is, not to make excuses, but to paint the picture, we had 2 weeks to prepare to play the best team in the world. They're full-time professionals and had a 6-week lead in camp. So we were always going to get to that point where the physical was going to be a challenge. And as you saw there, we got to that back end and there were a few defensive decisions. There was some, attack turnovers that weren't consistent with the previous 70 minutes. They have the luxury of bringing on their bench, who out of that, I think there were 5 starters from the previous game against New Zealand. So clearly have world-class athletes coming on. And the reality is we unfortunately gave them opportunities that they were good enough to take. So, we're pretty... So I was going to say, we were just pretty confident in where we're at in our process. And now our challenge obviously is to chase that 80 minutes, which similar to Pac 4, it took us the tournament to build that physical capacity to go 80 minutes against a high quality team. Hopefully we're a few steps in front of that. We're aiming for that this weekend against France.
And you mentioned New Zealand, England's win over New Zealand. Of course, England's riding a high coming into the match against the Eagles, so their confidence is extremely high as well. I know none of the players really lack the confidence, but that definitely helps coming into a match against you guys. So when discipline's an issue, resulting in, 5-meter mauls off of lineouts that England had a few of, that's got to be disappointing. That's going to be hard for the team and yourself, the coaching staff to handle when you play so well and then you have the breakdowns or concede penalties in your own half. Is discipline something that you work a lot on? And do the players recognize that as, okay, what are we doing? What we got to do better with that?
Yeah, it was interesting. We gave them access, and they had a few mauls, but to be fair, we defended the mauls. We didn't concede off that. We conceded in general play. So, yeah, discipline is always at the forefront. And statistically speaking, our discipline has been pretty positive. But unfortunately, any opportunity for those top tier nations provides them with access, and access is the challenge there. As soon as they get in the 22, obviously the percentage of converting that into points is pretty high. I think they operated about 66% against us on the weekend, and they had a number of opportunities to do so. What we were pleased at, though, from a mauling perspective, is we were able to stop there. It's that their next 4 to 5 phases that they are very good at transferring into momentum that we were unable to stop at times.
And I'm sure you're a stats guy as far as coaching goes. I'm sure you have the coaching meeting after, look at stats. But I mean, you look at some of the stats, it was an even match, or if not better, for your side. I mean, you had to make England tackle. They made 50 more tackles than the USA had. Unfortunately, the Eagles missed a few tackles, but turnovers won about the same. USA won more rucks, so the play at the ruck was much better. Great having Kate and everyone else involved there. Ball possession a little bit higher than England. It just off on clean breaks and defenders beaten, which was an issue later in the match, obviously, and then penalties in your own half didn't help at all. But so when you look at stats like those after the match, is that something that you look at and say, okay, good. Those are good numbers, but now how can we make those into scoring opportunities or wins?
Yeah, I think you're probably sitting in on my post-match review, to be honest, because we talked about exactly that some of those key numbers. Like, we worked hard on our attack breakdown to generate quicker ball and allow us to play that slightly more expansive style that they're chasing. In terms of our ability to hold possession and to build phases, that was excellent. But the key stats where England was able to get an advantage was territory. So playing in the right areas of the field, and obviously they converted their A-zone attack. So they had more opportunities in our 22, and they were able to convert them. So, we're definitely trending in the right direction. But the challenge is for us is to spend less time in our half, and obviously more opportunities. Because so we had 5 entries into their 22, and we scored 3 tries. So we showed, if we can get there, we have the ability to score points. It's just a challenge now. And obviously, as you mentioned, their discipline pushing us back into our own half is a bit frustrating, because we know we can score points. We just need to spend, it's a bit of a cliche, I realize, as I'm saying it. We just need to play the game at the right end of the field. And, the more opportunities we can get, then the more opportunities we have to score points.
Let's talk about your players in this match and also this tournament. You mentioned Alez Kelter, so your sevens contingent played very well in the wings, and Alez, obviously beautiful in the centers. Her up and under try was just, a thing of beauty. Hard to ask much more from them. Alez comes right in and does great the centers, and also having Kate back and her leadership. How important is it to having those quality players like Alez and Kate in that mix?
Oh, it's massive. But we took a really young squad to Japan, and we learned a lot about our playing group. And part of that was around how we deal with pressure. Through our leadership. Obviously, Tess and Mac did a great job stepping into that space, and K-Trades. Yep. But having not only Kate back, but having Hope back, having Rachel back, from a playing perspective adds a lot of impact, but also from a leadership perspective, how we were able to manage through, like we were down 28-7 there at halftime, yet turned the corner, came back and scored points and got ourselves back into the contest to 21-33. Adding Alev, adding Cheddar, adding Chris in, they're all experienced players that have been capped prior. So having that on the field has been huge for us, because that obviously not only it provides strike in the wider channels and what Lev shows down the middle of the field, but it also shows a lot of experience. So they weren't overawed when things turned and the momentum shifted against us. And then now, obviously, our challenge against France is to convert that experience, that strike, into more scoring opportunities.
Now, you have no new caps to present on this traveling squad during the WXV. Can you talk about the reason for that? Maybe not the tournament to break in new players. I mean, there are obviously Hope Rogers, a few others are up there in caps. Any particular reason why no new caps this tournament?
Yeah, but simply it's a performance tournament. Like, we came here to perform, to win games. We had the opportunity in Japan to introduce more players into our squad, and to be honest, there might not be new caps, but Emerson Allen earned her second cap, Sophie Pers earned her third. So we're building a little bit on the depth at the at that end, but we're also up against the best teams in the world. So we need best players who are performing really well, and obviously bringing Hope back in was massive. It changes the landscape of our set piece, but also of that third phase. Rachel Johnson coming around the corner. There are very few players in world rugby that have the physical impact of Rachel on that second phase. And then Kate just is a smart football player. So I really enjoy working with her, because she can play 6, 7, 8 at a pinch. You probably won't see this in my coaching time, but at a pinch, if she wants to, she could probably play 13. So having that back on the field is so important. In terms of where we're at the moment, we're leaning on that experience and the players that have showed that they can perform under pressure. And obviously in our wider squad, we still have those less experienced players, learning from them. Olivia Leatherman, for example, has been capped, I think, 4 or 5 times, gets the opportunity to sit down with Hope and learn from her and build her understanding of the game, but also gets a chance to challenge her and see her firsthand. So that's the scaffolding at the moment.
Could you imagine if Kate started playing when she was, 12 instead of 22, where she would be right now? She's already a hell of a player, but I believe she didn't even start playing until her senior year in college, or possibly. The way she took the game on, and now she's the leader. I mean, I don't even know. The sky would have been a limit for her. I mean, she's already a great player. I don't have a question there for you, Sione. I was just thinking.
Okay. I think you can probably say that for a few players, to be honest, Bill. Like, you've got Kate,
of course.
Rachel Johnson, who started later. What's exciting coming through is that we've got some young players that have started playing at 12 and 13. So I don't think we spoke about it before, but young Saraya Ibarra made her debut in Japan, and she's 18 years of age. Wow. She's in the Sevens program, and obviously we'll be with them through World Series. But that's the exciting thing moving forward. I heard part of what Scott was saying around the pathway. We're going to try and work really hard to connect that pathway and be more aligned in terms of what the senior Eagles are doing to, the Falcons, and then the 20s, 20s and 18s. And that landscape is the exciting part, because there's a lot of talent there. We've just got to make sure that we nurture it up so that when they are 23, 24, we're seeing them pushing for selection versus 25, 26, 27, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Now, I don't know, you could be tired of hearing about this, but we keep hearing chatter on social media, whatever, about Ilona Maher wanting to take a crack at making the team for Rugby World Cup, possibly. Has your staff had any conversations about that would look like, the possibility of that? Obviously, she would need to earn the spot, but have you talked about that, and also what it would mean maybe to have someone with that kind of visibility for the game on the women's team? Obviously, that wouldn't be the main reason to be on the team, but what would be the possibility of Ilona making the team?
I think before we get to her making the team, the fact that she's had this much of an impact for rugby, full stop, and then USA would be secondary. What her, Emily, and the Sevens program were able to do in Paris was outstanding. I was, obviously coming from Australia and watching that bronze medal, cheering the Eagles on him, and when Spiff, made that break in the middle, was just as excited as every other US person was. So that's a massive positive. But I've had a couple of conversations with Ilona, and she's been upfront about wanting to earn the jersey. And it's a culture that we're building within this program that, obviously if you want to play 15s, you've got to play 15s. So that's part of it. But it's been great to see that alignment of the 7s and the 15s. And, it's not just the ones that you've seen that have spoken to me. There's a few others that would like that opportunity as well. So hopefully we can align that in the lead up to the World Cup, because effectively what we are quite clear about as a staff and as a program, we want to take the best 32 women to the World Cup to compete for the USA. And clearly we've got some markers along the way. So Pac 4 will be a big one that we want players to be available for to then earn that selection. And then the stars align a little bit next year, and then the Sevens World Series will conclude, and that allows us to obviously have access to those players as well. And Emily's been great at part of those conversations, but also working with us around our depth chart and how we can align those bits. So someone like Ilona, you look at her physicality, you look at her skill set, and it fits both games. Now it's just a matter of what number she might wear.
And she's not completely new to 15s. She's played before, so that wouldn't be too much of a difficult swing for her.
No, and that's been the great thing about the US women, to be honest, mate, is most of the players that have been in the Sevens program have played 15s, and then some of the players that are in my program, like Hope in particular, I keep going back to but Hope obviously been captain for the US in Sevens as well. So it's nice, and that you've seen that with Lev, Cheddar, and Chris being able to transition pretty seamlessly after what is a limited preparation into that England game.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Meu nome é Cairo Santos e eu sou kicker e único brasileiro jogando na NFL. Cada chute, cada jarda conquistada, cada passo me levou para mais perto dos meus sonhos. Agora, a cada R$200 em compras com seu Visa cadastrado, você tem a chance de ficar mais perto do sonho de assistir ao Super Bowl 59. E usando o seu cartão de débito, você ainda concorre a prêmios diários de até R$1.000. Não importa o tamanho do seu sonho, dê o primeiro passo. Visa, apoiando seus passos aonde você quiser chegar.
And back to the show. All right, let's jump forward. This weekend, you have France on Saturday, who lost to Canada this last weekend. Talk about your preps for France. What do they do well that you are preparing for?
Yeah, so their halves are great. They have one of the best 9s in world rugby, and their 10 is a very creative player who can run, pass, and kick. We watched that game live in the stadium, and Canada did a fantastic job. So acknowledging the Northern neighbours, they were able to out physical them, and obviously their set piece put France under a bit of pressure. So we're preparing for a very dynamic French team who have strike players across the field, and they kick really well. So on the flip side to that provides opportunities as well. Kicking to our backfield, and Bulo, Chris, Cheddar, Nana, when she gets the opportunity, is an exciting thing for us. We get a chance to counterattack on it, and we also are really happy with how our set piece is progressing, and that's an area that we are pretty keen to put them under some pressure over. Today I just got back from. Sorry, it's getting a bit dark here, but I got back from an opposed session against Canada, where we went full noise in our units, and then we played 40 minutes of gameplay against them. So yeah, really taking advantage of that physical preparation, but also asking some questions, obviously, at what they focused on and whether that aligns in terms of the pitches that we've seen.
And considering how physical that match against England was, is there anyone on your squad who is not available this Saturday due to injuries from that match?
No, at the moment everyone's available. Obviously a bit banged up. It was physical, but at the same time, we're expecting that. It's tier 1 rugby, so if you get to week 3 and you're feeling fresh, you probably haven't been involved very much. So no, it's at this point in time everyone's available. Obviously we've got one more session to get through, but if everything trends the way it should, then we'll have our strongest team out there on Saturday.
You have Ireland the following week. They just beat the Black Ferns for the second time ever. What does that win from Ireland say about how no result is a given in the WXV1?
Oh, it says obviously exactly that no result is a given if you perform well. And that's the beauty of rugby, right? Like, ball's in contest, and if you're good enough to win it, you get to play. If you're not, then obviously you spend a fair bit of time defending. It also says a bit around, Ireland's now in their second year of professionalism. They've got time. They've invested, obviously, money into their women's game, and you can see the result of that. It's exciting for us because we know if we get more time, and we'll have more time leading into the World Cup, we get an opportunity to prepare in a similar vein. We would look at a 6-week preparation versus a 2-week prep. And that closes the gap. And what Ireland has shown, that if your set piece is strong, you're physical on the ball, and you can play with a little bit of endeavour, then, special things happen. And I thought how they closed out that game against New Zealand was pretty impressive, considering, the gap in terms of the world rankings and obviously that talent pool that New Zealand's pulling from. I thought, full credit to Ireland for having the character to stay in it and then close it out at the end.
So post WXV, what's next for you and the team? When does the team meet up again next?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a break, to be honest. Post WXV, the PWR players, of which we have a fair number, will all go back to the UK and transition into their season, which starts next week, I think. So they'll transition into that. The domestic-based players that aren't involved in the UK competition will go on to an off-season program. So, we get a chance to actually build some physical capacity in the off-season before we launch our 2025 campaign for World Cup. We will, at this stage, assemble in January for a talent ID camp. And that'll be just the domestic-based players. And then we have a couple of, we have a test match against Japan planned before we head into Pac 4. So if everything goes to plan, which it looks like it's going to be confirmed, then we should have 2, potentially 3 domestic test matches in the US next year. So that's exciting. Yeah.
Have one on the East Coast if you don't mind.
Trying. We'd like to spread the we'd like to spread the love.
Yeah, it's a big country, as you're finding out. I asked Scott Lawrence about this earlier for his players and not in his traveling pool and the PNC or the November tests, and also for those players who are not in the squad at all. I asked them how they were staying physically fit or rugby fit, rugby active. They got the American Rugby Premiership for the men's on the East Coast at least, so many players are doing that. And you mentioned a number of your players. A lot of your players will be over in Europe playing in the PWR. The others, though, and including the others who are maybe coming up who could crack the squad soon, how are they playing? Are there leagues right now? Are they active in this fall playing? I know you said something about the the training schedules, everything else for them. So how are they staying rugby fit?
Yeah, so the vast majority are in their off-season program. So we'll see at the moment we're in a little bit of a pause with WXV being the main focus. But once we transition out, they'll all be on remote programming. There's a few players involved that'll be playing up in the Northwest. Their competition rolls in with Canada being active, but the vast majority will be on those off-season programs. The intent then is to, as I said, build a fair bit of physical capacity. So from a rugby standpoint, it will be quite limited, but what that means is that we get a fair bit of time to build our physical capacity, which, being that we're not full-time professionals, is an area that we don't always get a chance to focus on. So we're pretty excited about building through that through to January. And then obviously the discussions around WER and that transition into February, March are still ongoing, but hopefully that becomes a reality, and those environments become that high performance environment that we're able to then share players with that competition.
So lastly, Sione, when we first spoke soon after you took the role, you didn't really have a grasp yet about the immense size of the country. Well, you did, but I mean more about the rugby landscape and everything from college to high school to club level. Do you have a better idea now, or is it more confusing?
No, I definitely have a better idea.
Okay.
And it's it's a huge landscape, but it's also exciting because the opportunities to connect and align some of those a lot of those parts, to be honest, and actually drive a pathway. And when I say actually, it's not meaning to be disrespectful of what's being done, but really drive an aligned pathway through not just World Cup, but what comes next. Because obviously World Cup is our core focus, but the reality is that post-World Cup, there'll be a transition of the playing group. We have a mature playing group, experienced one, which is exciting in some ways, but it also means that, we've got to work pretty hard on that next generation that's coming through that'll take us through 26, 27 into 29. So it's daunting at the size, but also it's exciting because of the size, because the reality is there's a lot of talent out there. It's just trying to find opportunities to get access to it, but then also develop that so that they get an opportunity to push for a jersey one day. So daunting on one hand, but also exciting at the potential. And you probably, and I may have said this in our first meeting, but the potential of where this program can go is what gets me up every day, to be honest. And you've seen parts of it with the Eagles. The 20s obviously had a really good win against England earlier this year, so you can see it's there. It's just getting it consistent and making sure that we're able to connect it, and hopefully both the 15s and the 7s programs are pushing in that top echelon versus we're sitting about, I think we're 8th at the moment, so we'd like to be a little bit higher, and we feel we've got the talent to do that.
Well, I'm sure I speak for many, many others. We're excited about it too. We love seeing the growth. We love seeing this. We love seeing what you're doing with the team. But Sione, good luck this weekend against France. Good luck the rest of the WXV. And again, we'll touch base again early next year.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Cheers. Thank you, Sione. Have a great night.
You too. See ya.
Bye-bye. All right, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. If you missed it earlier in the show, the first half, we had USA Men's head coach Scott Lawrence join us to talk about the PNC and about the upcoming autumn matches against, I believe it's Spain, Tonga, Portugal, I believe it is, all overseas. So if y'all want to rent a charter plane, let's go see those matches. I don't have any money, so if you guys can chip in a few bucks for me, I love it. And then at the end there was Sione Fukofuka, the head coach of the USA Women's program, who's in his first year still as a head coach, and things are looking good for that program as well. So check it out. This show will be released as a podcast on Thursday. Every Thursday, these shows are released as a podcast. And if you don't mind, please give us a like, follow, and subscribe either here on the live channel, YouTube, or Facebook, and especially on our podcast replays, and share them with your friends or enemies. Doesn't matter. As long as they like rugby or want to get into rugby, we do appreciate it. We really enjoy these shows. Also, stay tuned. A little program, next Wednesday, we have our eyes set on a new sevens coach who very likely will be on the show. So stay tuned for that. Anyway, thanks everybody for tuning in. I had a blast talking to Scott and Sione, and I had a blast of you guys listening to as well. Have a great night. Have a great weekend. Talk again later.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.